finishing meetings on time, doesn't matter what. If there are more questions, we'll add by emails or chat. So people should enjoy their weekend and families afterwards. So with that, welcome everybody. This is our series of sessions on webinars about what is happening in healthcare research in Pakistan and how people outside the Pakistan, doctors and other scientists, can get involved. And this is series of those lectures. And we as APPNA Merit, this is sponsored by APPNA Merit, and Shahid is the co-chair and Zaheer is very active in our committee. And I'm also a co-chair for them for research. Danish is not here today. He's enjoying the weekend. We gave him off. I hope he doesn't log on. So basically, I will introduce the speaker and the other moderators. And remember, this is a CME program. You get about 12 hours CME if you attend and you fill the form. Also, since it's CME, if anybody's talking, especially our speaker, anything which is conflict of interest in reference to CME, then please declare, but I don't think so. But just keep that in mind. With that, I think, let me start introducing our speaker first, and then we'll talk a few minutes about the panelists today. So our speaker is Hasan Abbas. Hasan Abbas is a MD PhD or MBBS PhD, MBBS from Rawalpindi Medical College at that time, now University, where me and Shahid are from. And then he is in PhD in hematology from London, University of London. And then he also have an MBA, but most likely the work he is known for or he likes to talk about is his contribution in refining the blood transfusion systems in Pakistan and around Pakistan. And he has been working with government for many years. Now he's working as an independent consultant and was involved in clinical trials for COVID in Pakistan or in global trials in Pakistan. And most recently, he's now involved in a vaccine development in Pakistan, which Hasan was talking earlier, me, Zaheer, and Shahid. I think it's really, really a big achievement. People may not realize or may not know about it, people living in America or Canada, or even in Pakistan. So we should all talk about it because I think it's a big achievement for Pakistan to try to get things done. With that, everybody knows Zaheer. Zaheer, wave your hand. Zaheer, I call him, he is our Google for finding scientists who can then help us to put this team together and move together. He's in Canada, he's with Canadian Research Council, and he's our very must leader for this whole webinar series and otherwise Merit activities. Shahid is a neurologist in Maryland area, DC area, and he's been in Merit with me for last many years. And now Danish is younger than both of us, so he's basically leading, we're helping him. We also have Fiza Gilani. She just said she's cooking and attending as a moderator somewhere she's a professor at Brown and very interested in this whole field. So with that, Hasan, you are on, we will not interrupt you. So you have, you finish your talk, but then we'll let people ask some questions.
Right. Can I have my presentation?
Yeah, Walid.
You want me share the screen?
Do you
Yes.
want to share this? You want to share your screen, Hasan, or you just want the presentation from Walid?
Okay, I'll try to put it on.
Yeah, so go to bottom. Yeah, here you are. We have your screen. Yeah, good.
But where is the presentation?
Actual talk. Oh, okay. So you don't have it on your laptop. Walid has it. Walid,
please just keep it. That's fine.
There you
That's
go.
fine.
There you go. Right there. Yes.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Dr. Babar, for this kind introduction. I'm going to talk to you about the experience, the Pakistan experience of the global clinical trial that we conducted in Pakistan starting in September last year. And it's still an ongoing trial, and it's now led to the development of and the strengthening of the vaccine sector in Pakistan. So this is the title of my presentation today. In this presentation, I'll briefly introduce the CanSino company, which developed this vaccine, and then how we went about conducting the trial, the results, the interim results that we got a few months ago, and the experience that we accumulated during this time, and the benefits that accrued from this clinical trial. And I will also share with you a few words about the global and national vaccine scenario, not just in the human sector in Pakistan, but also in the livestock and poultry sector, and how the vaccine formulation is now gathering pace in Pakistan. And I have some recommendations and way forward also to share with you. I have no conflict of interest to declare, and I would also like to declare that I am no clinical trial expert. This was the first time that I was ever involved in a clinical trial, and I'm also not a vaccine expert, but I'm still going to talk about the vaccine sector in some detail today. So CanSino is a private Chinese company which is listed in the Hong Kong and Shanghai stock market. And this is a relatively new company. About 15 years ago, it was established. And they did a lot of work in SARS and MARS pandemic when they happened, about 20 years ago. And so when the COVID pandemic happened, they quickly entered the arena and made rapid advances in developing the COVID vaccine. And they were very quick to start with their phase 1 and phase 2 trials also, and got them published last year in Lancet. And then they had to move on to the phase 3 trial. And this was a global trial. And this company is owned by a group of Chinese, Canadian Chinese, or rather Canadian of Chinese origin. And so the plan was to start the global trial from Canada, but due to political issues, that could not happen. And suddenly there was a crisis in CanSino, and they were looking around for some country to start the clinical trial from. And at that time, rather sometime before that, about 2-3 years ago, there was a Pakistani company, AGM Pharma, which was already in China exploring the possibilities for opportunities to develop the human vaccine sector in Pakistan with the help of some Chinese partners. And during this COVID pandemic, AGM Pharma was already in touch with CanSino, and so they agreed to start this. Rather, AGM managed to convince CanSino to come to Pakistan, start with their clinical trial, and if everything goes all right, maybe enter into the vaccine sector in Pakistan also for COVID vaccine formulation. So this clinical trial is designed to evaluate the efficacy, safety, and immunogenicity of the CanSino vaccine. And it is being held in 5 countries across 3 continents. And Pakistan was the first country where this trial was launched, and it was followed by Russia, Mexico, Chile, and Argentina. And the total number of volunteers for this trial are 40,000 in 178 different sites, including 5 sites in Pakistan. So we started this trial from the platform of the NCOC in Pakistan on September 22nd last year. And there were 3 partners. This was a public-private partnership in which the National Institute of Health was the principal investigator. CanSino Bio was the international sponsor, bearing all the expenses of this clinical trial. And AGM Pharma was representing CanSino in Pakistan, as well as facilitating this trial across the country. So the initial target for Pakistan was the recruitment of 10,000 volunteers, and later on the basis of good enrollment and good implementation of the trial, it was enhanced to 18,000. And after about 3 months of the initiation of the trial in Pakistan, the trial was launched in Mexico, and then it was followed by 3 other countries. And the benefit of starting the trial in one country first was that this provided an excellent opportunity to CanSino to streamline their documents, the guidelines, the protocols, and the processes, because this was the first time that CanSino was also doing a clinical trial of this scale at a global level. So the Pakistan experience helped a lot in implementing the trial in the rest of the 5 countries. So one of the things that we did right at the start was to identify and recruit a local clinical research organization, which is known as Dimension Research. There was not much choice. There are only a few of CROs available in Pakistan because there's very little clinical trial work in the country. And then we selected 5 research centers, one in Islamabad, Shifa Hospital, and Shaukat Khanam and UHS in Lahore, and Aga Khan and Indus in Karachi. All these 5 centers are premier medical centers in the country. Then the principal investigator submitted the proposal to the National Bioethics Committee in July 2020 for the approval of this clinical trial. And later the same process was followed by the ethical boards of the 5 research centers individually also. And this was followed by application to the Drug Regulatory Authority for the grant of a fast track approval, which they did in August 2020. In the meantime, CanSino appointed an international CRO known as TigerMed. And this TigerMed company was to act as a global CRO, not only for Pakistan, but also for the rest of the 4 countries. So the clinical trial was launched on September 22nd from Islamabad. And then we shifted after about a month to start the clinical trial in the 2 centers in Lahore. And then after 2-3 weeks, we started the trial in the Karachi centers also. The role of the principal investigator, the NIH, was to coordinate all the 5 centers, gear them up to conduct the clinical trial in a timely manner. And AGM was closely coordinating with the principal investigator as well as CanSino to facilitate the coordination and project management, data management, biometrics, pharmacovigilance, third-party audit, and everything possible to make sure that the work on ground proceeds unhindered. And at the same time, the Chinese experts from CanSino as well as TigerMed remained with us, physically present in all these different research centers to ensure that proper monitoring and evaluation was happening. Our recruitment of the volunteers was completed in January 2021. And at that stage, we submitted the data to a third party, which is known as Independent Data Monitoring Committee. And it submitted its report a few weeks later, and it turned out to be a very, very favorable report. And based on this positive report, we applied to DRAP for granting emergency use approval for the CanSino vaccine, which was granted to us in February. And later in the month, the Chinese authorities also granted approval, emergency approval. So the interim results of the global data was that the efficacy of the vaccine across all the countries was for people or volunteers less than 55 years old. It was almost 67% effective, and people greater than 55 years, it was 62% effective. And the vaccine efficacy for prevention of severe diseases was almost 91%. So these were very good results, and they encouraged all of us a great deal. For the Pakistan subgroup data, the results were even better. For the age group less than 55 years age, the efficacy was almost 78%. And for age group above 55 years, it was almost 61%. And vaccine efficacy for prevention of severe cases was almost 99%. So again, we were delighted with these results. And we got in Pakistan 101 biologically confirmed COVID-19 cases from our almost 18,000 cases, and these were detected after 28 days of immunization, and this is 25 weeks after vaccination. And we need to keep in mind that the WHO recommendation is that vaccines should be, vaccine efficacy should be at least 50%. So we were well above that, and even better than Sinopharm and Sinovac. So this is just a snapshot of the workload of volunteer recruitment in the 5 different sites in Pakistan. Total was, as I said earlier, 18,000. And among these 18,000 volunteers, there were only 4 reported cases of serious adverse events after vaccination. And fortunately, none of these cases was related to a vaccine. And you can see that, there was one roadside accident, there was one asthma case and one fracture and things like that. Nothing related to the actual vaccination. And so this data further supported our case for the safety and tolerability as well as efficacy of the vaccine. And this is the further breakdown of the 99 cases of infection that we found in the 5 centers. And the samples of these cases were sent to Canada for laboratory analysis. So now I will share with you the experience of conducting this clinical trial in these past few months. As I said earlier, the initial plan of the global trial did not include Pakistan, but because it could not be held in China, so Pakistan came up as an alternate. And because of that, there was an urgency to start. So there was lack of proper planning. Travel restrictions were also there because of COVID. And most importantly, all the partners involved lacked experience of actually conducting clinical trials, and especially clinical trial of such a huge scale involving so many healthy volunteers. So none of us was really prepared, but we were all very willing and committed. And as we went along, we gained a lot of rich experience, which came in very handy in the countries where the trial started later. Some of the things that happened in this clinical trial do not normally happen because normally the clinical trials proceed at a very slow and gradual pace, and they take a very, very long time, many years to complete. And so the preparations are fully in place before the trial is actually started. This was not the case in this trial, at least for Pakistan. And one of the things that we sorely missed in the beginning was that we received the clinical trial protocol quite late from CanSino. They were probably finalizing this document, and I believe it was the first time for them also. And our CRO also was not like the rest of us properly graded for this, and maybe they could have prepared a checklist based on this protocol if they had received it well in time, and we could all have adhered to it. Similarly, the NIH, which is the principal investigator, the whole team, it was the first time for them. And so we actually started without a work plan with a timeline. And normally, when you do a project of this scale, you have a properly structured work plan with timelines and targets, and you try to adhere to it. We never had the luxury of a work plan, and we still managed to come out quite impressively. Anyway, as I said earlier, we submitted the applications to the regulatory authorities and their bioethics committee in Islamabad before we actually received the final protocol, but they were very cooperative with us, and they processed these applications in principle. And as soon as the final protocol was received, we received both these approvals also. And in the meantime, all the 5 research centers also got their approval. But as we went along implementing the clinical trial, we learned that the protocol was at places it was not complete, the procedures and the guidelines, and in some cases some culturally inappropriate things were also included there, and so these things required alteration. And this is something which the global at the global level you have to keep in mind to be sensitive to cultural issues. The research centers, the 5 research centers that we had, they had limited experience of doing clinical trials. They were or they are conducting clinical trials, but they are small in scale, involving very small number of patients. And patients are, of course, captive subjects, and they are dependent on their treatment providers, which are also doing the trials. So it's not very difficult to recruit such subjects and then retain them also. But in our trial, we were not dealing with patients. We were dealing with healthy volunteers and a large number of them. So this was a special challenge, and we had to go about it very tactfully. Another thing that we missed in this clinical trial was that there was no opportunity to have proper face-to-face joint meetings, neither in the beginning nor in the middle. And keeping in mind that there were 10 different teams operating in Pakistan to implement this clinical trial. There was CanSino, there was TigerMed, there was Dimension, there was the NIH, AGM, and the 5 research sites. So although we have worked together now for so many months, many of us have not met each other. And so in normal circumstances, the opportunity of gelling together and getting to know and gaining from each other as much as would have been possible if we had had physical interaction. That opportunity we have missed, but this was something which could not be helped. But all of us gained a lot during the implementation of this clinical trial. Of course, if the pandemic situation had not been there, we would have been able to get the things done more quickly, and a lot of avoidable challenges would not have been there. But again, this is something that could not be helped. A few words about the recruitment of the volunteers. There was not good clarity about it in the research protocols. And I think for different countries, you need to have a culturally and religious and ethnic considerations need to be kept in mind in devising a strategy. So even in a global trial, you need to have flexibility for the recruitment strategy. And this is something that we can put it down to experience. Maybe next time CanSino or the Pakistani partners do it, we can do it much better. But I personally feel that the volunteer recruitment work is something which is quite a specialized work, and it is best if this work can be outsourced to some professional organizations like some research organizations or universities or some partner like that. But overall, we got good support. I would say, the government didn't stop us from preventing our work, but they didn't have a very clear idea about what we were doing. And I think if they had a better comprehension of the work that we were doing, we would have received more cooperation from the government. Like, along the same time, the Sinopharm was doing its clinical trial in UAE, and there the government was fully supportive of the clinical trial and putting in a lot of time, effort, and resources in it. And even volunteer recruitment was being done with heavy involvement of the government. And so state support in a developing country, it works wonders. But despite that, I think we managed to do the best that we could. Continuing with the experience of implementation of this work on ground. We faced some management issues at some of the research centers. Again, there was a flaw in the planning. In charge of all the, there was one in charge at all the 5 sites who was invariably a very busy senior physician who was expected to look after all the technical aspects and be responsible for the outcomes also. In addition, he was also responsible for managing the routine daily managerial functions. I think this work could have been best left to floor managers who could have been given the targets of making sure that the daily recruitment and data entry and all that kind of work is done by the end of the day in a disciplined and coordinated manner. So for the next time, I think it would be very helpful if the centers have a separate person to deal with the administrative work. One of the issues that we faced during the trial was that the electronic data system was shared a bit late by CanSino with us. And this was especially affected the work in Islamabad. And the result was, the impact was that the team in Islamabad got used to manual data entry. And when the electronic data entry system was shared with them, they took their time in getting used to it. But the protocol was that both manual as well as electronic data entries had to be done, and it was best if both the things were done on a day-to-day basis every day. Right. So another experience point was that in order to get the best results and best performances from all the different centers, the budget release should be linked to precise deliverables. In our case, it was just linked to the number of volunteers which were being recruited without making sure about their entries into the electronic system. But all in all, it was a very good learning experience, and the quality of work done overall was very good quality work, which was endorsed by the third-party audit also. But one of the things that we missed out so far, and I hope someone rectifies it, is that we have yet to develop a country report of this clinical trial. And this is the role of the country PI. And I hope NIH realizes that and starts work on it. Operational experience also not been documented yet. Again, NIH needs to do that. The logical and the statistical outcomes have also not been documented. All this should be part of the comprehensive report. And the interim report prepared by the third party, which was shared with the government in February, has still not been shared by the partners who implemented the clinical trial. So for some reason, it has been kept confidential. And there's a tendency in Pakistan to keep reports confidential. And I think we should give up this policy and start by sharing this clinical trial. So anyway, there were, as a result of all this hectic work, we feel that there were multifaceted benefits of this clinical trial held in Pakistan. First of all, there were a lot of public benefits. The public was sensitized not only about the pandemic, but also for the first time, people heard the name of clinical trial because we were in the electronic and social media in a big way, particularly for recruiting the volunteers. And so people became mentally prepared about the COVID immunization, which was still a few months away at that time. And as a result of this clinical trial, 18,000 people in the country got COVID protection, half of them at the start and half of them, the placebo group, was covered later. And as a result of this successful implementation of the clinical trial, the CanSino group honored their commitment to us, and the access to their vaccine was ensured. We got preferential access and price for this vaccine because of this very good experience. And this we managed to do without making any heavy investment in advance bookings, which was the case in all the Western countries. Pakistan just could not afford blocking their money for a long time in making bookings for the vaccine. Now, as a result of all this work, in a few days, I think in 2 days' time, we are going to launch or rather roll out the locally produced CanSino vaccine in Pakistan. So the pandemic management in the country is going to strengthen as a direct benefit of this clinical trial. So this trial also had tremendous economic benefits for the country. Just for this trial, about $8 to $10 million in foreign investment has come in the country. And if you compare it with the annual foreign exchange income of the entire pharma sector in Pakistan, which is about $200 million, with a little bit of attention and support from the government, the clinical trial industry in Pakistan can easily beat the exports of the pharma sector in Pakistan. This is something amazing, which can happen now in a very quick time and without a single penny investment from the government. And this is something which is already happening in India. In India, these clinical trials are a $4 to $5 billion industry every year, again, as a result of good policies by the government without making any investment. And already we are witnessing a very keen global interest, not only from the pharma companies, but also from medical research organizations, and they are contacting us and expressing their interest to conduct their clinical trials in Pakistan. There are also a lot of technical benefits. For the first time, the doctors, the hospitals, and the government, and all the partners realized that a clinical trial is something which can be conducted in Pakistan. And during these past few months, a lot of intellectual property and intervention capacity has developed. The CRO capacity has developed manyfold, and many enterprising experts are now reviving their CRO companies, which were dormant for a long time, and new companies are coming about. And even TigerMed, the international CRO, has established its country office in Pakistan, and it has weaned away a lot of experts who were already associated with the few CRO presence in the country. But anyway, it's a good opportunity for Pakistan, and experts who are who are interested in clinical trials have got good career opportunities for them. And the capacity of the local labs is also increased now, and hopefully in future trials, a lot of laboratory work can be handled in Pakistan now. But for this trial, we sent our samples to Canada. But the best part is that the involvement of NIH as the principal investigator in this study, their outlook has changed completely. Their capacity has enhanced manyfold. But the best part is that their confidence has really developed, and they are now, very, very good at this work, I think. And as I said earlier, a lot of interest from the rest of the world in this clinical trial. It was followed very, very closely, and we have received requests from the Pakistan embassies, the Foreign Office, and also direct requests to NIH and the research centers, and even the AGM Pharma has received requests for collaboration. Unfortunately, not all of these opportunities we have been able to exploit, especially NIH has not been able to handle the requests that have come their way. And I feel that they need to, they're already overburdened with this clinical trial and the vaccine production work. And there are a lot of other exciting things happening in NIH because of the present leadership in NIH, which sadly was not the case ever before in NIH. But this is the time, I think, that the NIH should establish a dedicated unit or a cell in NIH, which should realize all these opportunities And NIH can act as a PI itself, or it can also act as a mentor and develop other institutes and medical universities and other places to act as PIs. So a learning process has been initiated, and the minds of all the stakeholders have been opened up, and we are ready to take on more clinical work with much more confidence and much more ability. At the same time, the capacity of the regulator has also developed, and believe me, the draft capacity, there's a lot of room for improvement in their capacity, and they've been very cooperative with us. And in this process, their horizon and vision has also expanded. And the first time in their history, they have granted an emergency use approval for any vaccine in the country. And as a result of all these exciting developments, we are now witnessing technology transfer in the vaccine sector in Pakistan. Up till now, we were only doing limited vaccine filling and labeling. And this work has now been taken to the next level, and we are now doing vaccine formulation. And all this has further strengthened the Sino-Pak relations and extended this strong bond into the scientific sector also. And it's been very good for the, I think, the image building of the country in the scientific world also. Now, a few words about the global vaccine scenario. So before this COVID pandemic, the global vaccine sector was worth more than $60 billion. But now I think this figure must have multiplied by 3 or 4 times. Now, I think Zaheer would be more current with that, but I'm sure it's much, much more than 60 billion. And a major, I think, lion's share of that part would be coming from China, because their 3 companies, Sinopharm, Sinovac, and CanSino, have done brilliantly. And I think there are some other Chinese companies also in the pipeline. But the vaccine industry, when we talk about vaccine industry, we only assume that it is, we are talking about human vaccines, but that is not the case actually. Vaccine industry also include veterinary and poultry vaccines. And in order to have good national healthcare policy, we must have access to good quality, effective and affordable vaccines, not only for our human population, but also for our animals and livestock. So vaccine production is essential for all of us in any given country, for routine healthcare as well as emergency and disaster management and bioterrorism and all that. And the vaccine sector initially developed many decades ago. Vaccines initially developed about 200 years ago by Terry Jenner, and gradually, most of the vaccine development work has been limited to the West, but in the past few decades, there has been a shift to the developing countries also through technology of transfer. This was not the case for Pakistan, but now Pakistan has also joined the countries where vaccine production is happening. So at the moment, Pakistan is heavily dependent on international donor grants and imports. And every year, EPI faces audit para from the national auditors that why are you every year importing, spending so much money, millions of dollars on importing vaccines? Why don't you do anything about production of vaccines in the country? So hopefully this audit para would be settled with the development that is happening in the NIH now. So we are doing only limited vaccine production, which is filling and labeling only, and that too only for tetanus toxoid, measles, and rabies. And most of the vaccines in the country, 80% of them are consumed through the public sector, through the API programs and the other places. There are about 9 or 10 vaccines in the API program, which is administered to all the children in the country. But there are many other essential vaccines also, which are not part of the API program. And sad to say that we are very short of these basic vaccines like rabies and anti-snake venom and meningitis and typhoid. And people in the country are still dying of dog bites and snake bites because their vaccines are not available in our hospitals. And similarly, for the animal and veterinary and poultry sector also, the need is a lot, but it is not being catered. And all these things have a huge impact on the national economy. So the vaccine scenario in Pakistan is that, as I said earlier, we have mostly in Pakistan, the pharma sector is doing formulation, which is also known as basic is known as shared manufacturing by WHO, which means that the pharmaceutical industry imports the basic ingredient, the basic raw material, and then does the rest of the work in the country. And same is the case now in our vaccine also. But until now, we were only doing limited filling and labeling, despite the fact that we started off in the vaccine sector in the early 1980s. But our progress until the COVID pandemic had not been very impressive. Rather, it's nothing to write home about. India joined the race much later, but now they are among the largest global vaccine manufacturer. And all that progress is attributable to the good, sensible national policies adopted by the various governments in India. So this is a snapshot of the impact of vaccines on the different health indicators in the country. We are all aware that our basic health indicators are very poor: mortality, morbidity rates among children, neonate, maternal rates. They are all very poor, and most of them are related to preventable diseases which can be prevented through vaccines, like for pneumonia vaccines, diarrhea vaccines, tetanus, and so many other things. And if we have our own indigenous formulation or basic manufacturing going on in the country, we would be able to improve all these indicators very, very significantly and make a huge improvement in our SDGs. So the government is thinking of improving and fixing this immunization scenario in the country, and they have got a PC1 approved of $370 million, and most of this, more than about 3/4 of this, is funded by the Pakistan government, and this is how it should be. Any project of such a significance must have majority funding by the government. This demonstrates the national political commitment, and of course, donor funding is also there, which is also good to maintain discipline and transparency in a project. Now, a few words about the poultry and livestock sector in Pakistan. We all know that we have a huge population in the country. We are 220 million people, and I believe there are as many number of buffaloes, cattle, goats, sheep, donkeys, horses, etc. In the country. And in addition, there's a very rapidly growing pet market also, and we are importing, spending a lot of money, more than $2.6 million every year on feed for these pets. So this is, again, no one realizes this, but there are a lot of needs for these animals also, which we need to take care of. And poultry, we are all very fond of poultry meat, and so this sector is better organized than the livestock sector, and there are so many millions of chickens and roosters, and I can't tell the real difference between all these boilers and roosters, but believe me, there are a lot of them, and they are producing a lot of eggs every year, and they need to be properly looked after, and their health needs to be in good shape because we are consuming their proteins. So the vaccine scenario in the country, neglect in the national vaccine production has been due to lack of vision, foresight, and political commitment, whereby instead of focusing on developing indigenous capacity. There was a preference for buying the vaccines off the shelf in complete disregard to national security concern. This is something which is unforgivable, really. From time to time, half-hearted attempts have been made to develop vaccine production in the NIH through public funds and also donor funds. But the efforts, as I said, have been half-hearted and never really followed up. So what needs to be done in Pakistan is that we need state support for this sector. The state needs to provide good incentives, tax rebates, duty-free imports for some period at least of the raw material, need to promote public-private partnership. It is an undeniable fact that where the public and private sector partners work together in a public setting, you can bring wonders. Capacity building in the basic sciences is absolutely essential. And since government is the main consumer of the vaccines in Pakistan, so in order to protect and encourage private sector investment in this sector, government must provide guarantees and buyback agreements to the private sector. And the main place where all this production work, manufacturing work should be happening was the NIH. And vaccine production and R&D was among the core mandates of NIH, but sadly, NIH failed to fulfill its designated role, and it still continues to struggle with its managerial, technical, structural, and financial issues on a daily basis. And all this has resulted in disappointing performance of NIH so far. Not talking about the present leadership. And so all this has been due to lack of political commitment, lack of suitable leadership in NIH until now, and lack of financial and administrative autonomy. All these three factors are basically is the same story in many different government organizations, and sadly NIH is also no exception.
So Hasan, sorry, yeah. This is Babar. We have 1 or 2 more minutes to summarize.
Okay. So I'll skip over and I'll just talk about fewer. Draft needs a real shot in the arm. Their capacity is very limited. We need complete reforms in draft. We need to have vaccine experts and all the other different kind of experts there. And they need a complete overhauling. And one of the reasons for their poor performance is because a lot of technical posts are vacant. There are too much litigation cases in draft which need to be addressed. And so it is the responsibility of the health ministry to supervise draft, and they need to pay more attention to it, because you can't develop the vaccine sector as you should unless the regulator is also doing a good work. We need to give up the witch hunting culture. Some recommendations: we need to have organize an international medical conference to document all this experience and share with all the partners. We need to talk to each other. There is no coordination between the sister organizations, like even EPI and NIH. There's a big communication gap. NIH must be granted financial and administrative autonomy as outlined in the new NIH ordinance, and private sector must be co-opted in this work. Medical universities must be encouraged. Global pharmaceutical industry should be given attention. Drastic reforms in draft, and public should be educated in a big way about these exciting developments that are happening in Pakistan in the vaccine sector. So the global phase 3 clinical trial has presented Pakistan an excellent opportunity to show our real worth in the scientific sector. With the grace of God, we have managed to successfully conduct this clinical trial, as a result of which the vaccine production sector has also received a boost. And now we need the government to work towards ensuring vaccine security by providing suitable and enabling environment to all of us in the country to take all this work to its logical conclusion. So thank you very much. And I must acknowledge the contribution of Dr. Zaheer in enlightening me on all these various aspects of clinical trial and vaccine production, and also in putting together this presentation in this format for all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hasan. Thank you so much. This was very good review of what is going on in Pakistan on COVID vaccine and vaccine in general. I would ask Danish because he joined. I was giving him a day off, but he didn't take it. So maybe we can ask Danish Dr. Bhutta for a few minutes for comments, and then we will take some questions. Go ahead, Danish.
Thank you, Dr. Babar. I don't have anything to add. I was listening in halfway through finishing another webinar, but I thoroughly enjoyed all the points made by Professor Hasan, and I look forward to comments from Professor Zulfikar Bhutta.
Dr. Bhutta, please.
Well, thank you very much. I was looking forward to this particular webinar, and it's been very informational. Thank you, Zaheer. I thoroughly enjoyed your presentation, and just so that you know, I have some, I wouldn't say conflicts of interest, but I have some insights to share by virtue of a finger in almost all the three pies you've talked about. So I'm the chair of the new board of governors of the NIH, with an enormous responsibility for revamping NIH. So I must be careful what I say. Secondly, I have been responsible for the R&D at HEC in terms of funding universities for the last couple of years. So I have a pole position in knowing capacity, kya capacity hai national usme, and also on what's happening in the animal sector. And third, that I've also had some insights into DRAP, because I'm on the committee that approves a number of these things. So मैं दो-तीन बातें को शुरुआत करना चाहूँगा. पहले तो it's great that Pakistan was able to implement, chahe lula, langda, late, whatever, the phase 3 trial for cancer in bio. I think it's a huge experience, and as you can hear from other sources, it has opened the door for many other trials. There's a different ethical debate to kaise hone chahiye trials, but I mean, today I'm only going to talk about what are the things that we need to do. So the first thing in this is, I think we should be very careful, Zaheer Saab and the colleagues, Shahid Abdi and Zaheer, please note this, that we should not be calling this achievement at NIH, which is a great achievement, because, you know, filling and supply line upgradation, measles production, jo band ho gayi 7 saal se, getting the whole thing to run again is not small. And I know the government has approved PC1s for 200 million rupees for that particular purpose. So that's quite an achievement. And to be able to fill to a good quality cancer in bio to that level. But I think it's a bit disingenuous for the government to have renamed the vaccine as PakVac, because it's given people the impression that shayad the vaccine Pakistan mein bani hai. I mean, it's been refilled. And just tarah aapke arbab iqtidar, just aap Zaheer ne kaha ki there is an audit objection every year ki aap vaccine banate kyun nahi hai. My worry always is somebody at the planning commission level will declare victory and game over, say ji Pakistan ne to vaccine banani shuru kar di hai, inka PC1 aap kyun approve kar rahe hain. We need close to $300 to $400 million invested in vaccine R&D for national security. That's my charge as a chair of the BOG at NIH. और वो पैसा कहाँ से आएगा, कैसे आएगा, ये भी देखने की बात है, आज की बहस नहीं है. But I can tell you, as Zaheer will, कि I've been trying for over 2 decades. ये जो government को recommendation के vaccine and biologicals is a national security issue was made as far back in Zaheer, remember 2004, when I was chairing the Vaccine Development Task Force, and it was torpedoed at that time by none other than the Minister of Health and the Health Department at that time. There was one federal department. Why? Because they made the argument, malafide as it was, that कि जी हमें क्या जरूरत है वैक्सीन बनाने की, हमें तो मिल जाती है गावी से, हमें तो मुफ्त मिल जाती हैं. इस वक्त गावी शुरू में आपको वैक्सीन मुफ्त दे रहा था, but not forever. And a case was made. I think Zaheer was present in a meeting where we had at the Ministry of Science and Technology with the secretary at that time, where we absolutely raised the issue after the first earthquake कि आपको अपने anti-gas gangrene serum भी, the Secretary of Health at that time had to beg the concerned authority in India कि जी हमें आप gas gangrene serum भेजें because हमारे सारे मुल्क में सिर्फ 6 वायद थे. And we said कि ये आपकी शारक है, और वो ही हुआ है इतने सालों के बाद कि जब ये वैक्सीन डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन की बात आई, and even before India had its own internal requirements, उन्होंने सारे इलाके में वैक्सीन डिस्ट्रीब्यूट किया under their diplomacy and deliberately excluded Pakistan, asking कि पाकिस्तान जो है वो किसी तरह एड़ियां रगड़ के आए उनके पास कि हमें वैक्सीन दे. सो ये चीजें नेशनल सिक्योरिटी की होती हैं, और ये इस वक्त बड़ा जरूरी है कि जो मुहिब वतन लोग हैं इस वक्त जो R&D में शामिल हैं, वो इस वक्त इसकी ऐसी एडवोकेसी करें कि ये ना हो कि ये चीज दोबारा इनकम्प्लीट रह जाए कि अभी हमें जरूरत है, हम तो फिल कर रहे हैं और हम तो सप्लाई कर रहे हैं और हमारे चीनी खैर खा तो हमें हमेशा वैक्सीन दे देंगे. ये नहीं होगा. Even with CanSino, they didn't give you free vaccine. Yes, they helped you, but you have to buy it at preferential rates, and वो preferential rates पे एक limited time के लिए. So मेरी इस्तदा आप सबसे ये है कि आप इसमें बिल्कुल NIH and concerned organizations का हाथ बटाएं और इसमें private sector को सामने लाइए, जो बड़ी जरूरत है. वैक्सीन एंड बायोलॉजिकल प्रोडक्शन सारी दुनिया में कभी भी सवाए कम्युनिस्ट स्टेट्स के क्यूबा हो गया, कभी भी पब्लिक सेक्टर में नहीं होती. अगर होती भी है तो बड़ी कहते हैं ना आला मिकदार की, आला तरीके से नहीं होती. इट्स ऑलवेज प्राइवेट एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप दैट ब्रिंग्स अस फॉरवर्ड एंड प्राइवेट इन्वेस्टमेंट्स, and we tried for that in Pakistan at that time also, and we had people ready to come forward before the government said कि जी इसकी जरूरत नहीं है. So पहला पॉइंट मेरा ये है कि इसमें आपकी बड़ी इमदाद की जरूरत है. Secondly, जो आपने जिस चीज का, and I'm very very pleased actually, I think you've been very forthright to point out the limitations and the handicaps in doing these trials, जिसमें ना सिर्फ local capacity का issue था बल्कि sponsors का भी issue था. I mean, we also, I think CanSino should have done much better than what they did. Haphazard तरीके से protocol, I mean, and I know because I'm at APPNA कि इसमें क्या challenges थे even getting PIs to agree on endpoints. जी कौन सा endpoint होगा आपको? What about asymptomatic positive cases? They were excluded. So अभी तक हम CanSino का, I mean, I have the data, हम unravel नहीं कर सके कि इसकी true efficacy है क्या. Why? Because you have only partial information, and हो सकता है जब ये paper publish हो, and I hope it's done quickly, that we'll have better information. So बड़ी जरूरत है कि the dialogue between sponsors and national investigators should be at the level of scientific, I think, parity. ये हाकिम और महकूम की बात नहीं है कि बस ये दे दिया आप कर लें. You have to have a scientific dialogue. My last point on this, Zaheer and colleagues, is आपने बिल्कुल सही निशानदेही की है इसकी कि अगर हमने इसमें आगे जाना है तो हमें अपना प्रोडक्शन जो है साइंटिस्ट का उसको बेहतर करना पड़ेगा. मैं इसकी मिसाल आपको क्या दूं कि आपको जैन ने बताया था शायद पिछले या उससे पिछले वेबिनार में कि हमने we put forward the rapid COVID proposals from HEC और उसमें कमोबेश कोई मेरे ख्याल में $30-35 million अवेलेबल थे और कोई 12 या 13 हमारे पास वैक्सीन R&D proposals आई थी from various institutions. चलो शुक्र उन्होंने भेजी तो थी, and they were not at the level of even bachelor's type proposals. They were so flimsy, so let's say non-scientific at times, that I think we need a tremendous effort at our universities, जो कि HEC को करने की जरूरत है, to strengthen basic fundamental research. जब कोई बैठ के लिखे कि जी मैं molecular biology से कैसे antigen isolate करूंगा, it should not be just cut and paste from publicly available things. It should be really scientifically done. And ये एक मैं बता दूं कि जो आज से 20-25 साल पहले vaccine development थी, with whole cell inactivated types of vaccines, वो खत्म हो गई अब. The future of vaccine development is in high throughput and high quality molecular biology studies of the kind that are being done to produce mRNA vaccines or DNA vaccines or whole protein vaccines. So बड़ा ज़रूरी है कि infrastructure और research institutions में बढ़े और ये एक रात में नहीं होगा. This will require investment now जो कि 10 साल के बाद आपको ये yield करेगी. So thank you very much for your time. मैं इस वक्त से आपके गोशगुजार कर रहा हूँ कि it is a challenge for me to tell the NIH at times कि anti-snake venom वैक्सीन और क्लासिक तरीके से पुरानी वैक्सीन जो बनाई जाती थी उनका दौर खत्म हो गया. अगर आप अब वैक्सीन में आगे आना चाह रहे हैं, वैक्सीन एंड बायोलॉजिकल्स में, तो यू हैव टू लुक एट द फ्यूचर बिकॉज एट सम स्टेज आपको पब्लिक सेक्टर से निकल के प्राइवेट सेक्टर को साथ लाना पड़ेगा. एंड देन पीपल विल जज. पाकिस्तान के लोग बेवकूफ नहीं है. इस वक्त भी लोगों में शऊर इतना है कि आपसे पूछते हैं कि जी मैं ये चीन की वैक्सीन लगवाऊं या ये मैं एस्ट्राजेनेका की वैक्सीन लगाऊं, क्या ये जो लाख डोजेज हमें फाइजर की मिली हैं मैं किसी को रिश्वत देकर कहूं कि जी मुझे फाइजर की वैक्सीन लगाएं. People have that sense कि क्वालिटी क्या होती है ड्रग्स एंड बायोलॉजिकल्स की. ये अलग बात है कि है नहीं ये मुयस्सर हमें, बट people will discern what's a good vaccine, what's a bad vaccine. So quality, and certainly high quality that we need, is absolutely important. So we should be working towards that together. Thank you very much for giving me the time. I will be really very, very supportive of any such effort, and I want to congratulate you all once again for a very informative session. मेरे लिए तो ये चीजें bonus है. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bhutta. That was very good summary of what you are trying to do. Uzair, do you want to say a few things, or Shahid, or take some questions? I promise I'll finish at 1, but we'll let it go till 1:07. So 5 minutes.
Just a very, very quick comment to Dr. Bhutta's suggestion. I am so happy to share with all the participants that one of the private sector who pledged close to investment of $100 million, and they are seriously considering to invest in the vaccine manufacturing, and they are contacting to get the best state-of-the-art technology. And I fully agree with Dr. Bhutta that this cannot be done in the public sector. We definitely need to involve the private sector, and they are the people who can make it happen. So that's very, very small response from my side. Thank you very much.
Shahid, any comment while I read the questions?
Sorry, yeah, Babar, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make a brief comment on Dr. Bhutta's. First of all, before that, I want to congratulate my friend Hasan Abbas Zaheer, that he really presented in a way what they did, but also what is the state of affair and what are the challenges. And then Dr. Bhutta addressing those challenges and bringing some more challenges. And I want to just pick up on his, I think, very earnest and sincere desire that the private sector, I think particularly the medical diaspora outside Pakistan, should seriously invest not only the time but money. I think that's my take, and I think if that's true, I would like to say that this is what personally, Babar, you and me, and of course Danish are trying to do to bring APPNA membership to this journey with us, what we are having this year. And I think the conclusion would be that we should find all these companies like Hasan Abbas, Zaheer's, and others, sincere people in Pakistan who are trying to do their best to support in a public-private partnership. And I think I have no doubt that Dr. Bhutta is very sincere in taking that help or investment. And I just wanted to say that I'm delayed in responding to Dr. Bhutta's offer through email after discussing with Danish that give him some, a researcher who have time and also the experience. But we will do that, and it's a separate thing. But I think taking an organization like APPNA Merit as an organization into different structures such as HEC, such as like DRAP has already offered, and we are grateful for them. But NIH and other organizations who are doing public-private partnership, I think, should have a seat for APPNA merit as a one seat, because we have a very democratic way of changing the leadership, and one person cannot, they get busy, they get, the environment change. So I think instead of giving the name of people, if it is a seat for the organization, I think, in my opinion, that would be better. But obviously that we can, separately discuss with Dr. Bhutta. But I just wanted to give assurance that from APPNA membership, that's what we are trying to do, to bring all their expertise as well as their money, I think, along with the time to Pakistan in these exciting times. Thank you.
Thank you, Shahid. Zaheer,
Babar, you got muted, so we didn't hear you last sentence.
I said, Zaheer, you want to take some final question before we close? Usman is bombarding the question. I will call Usman separately. I know him well. But
so,
go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
That's definitely, I think, as mentioned by Dr. Shahid Rafiq, and I'm also struggling to unite all the diaspora and their capacities. And let me call Dr. Professor Zulfikar Bhutta as the father of vaccine. He pulled everybody's arm into vaccine. And I remember like 20, 30 years ago, he did so much effort. So he never gave up. So that's why I consider him as my really most preferred leader, because he's going to invigorate, motivate everybody, and it's not going to let you go. And I think that's a very good offer. And Dr. Bhutta is in a position really to broaden the scope of NIH and bring the APPNA and like the similar organization in some way from to their participation as the draft they offered in the clinical research. And that's the way forward. That was the model adopted by our neighboring countries like India, and we can replicate the same. So that's just a very brief from my side. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you, everybody. I'm sorry there are questions. I promise me and Zaheer will look at the chat and answer the one which can answer, like political, like when will Imran will be next prime minister, we don't know. But the other ones we will answer and get back to you all. Thank you. See you all next Saturday.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.